Kabbalah deals with it. Like, oh, it came much later from tradition, and it's not like embedded in so much of the day-to-day.
In the more basic parts of the tradition.
I think that's a really big thing to
that's
know.
a really good. It's a really good question. I think I could think of some possible answers. The answer that I tell myself, that I have for myself, is really kind of like a different piece of the Ramchal that he writes in the introduction to Mesilat Yesharim. Very, very famous introduction to Mesilat Yesharim. Everybody here has probably learned it 100 times. That he says, "I'm not coming to teach you anything that you don't already know. Everything that I'm saying in the Sefer is very basic Judaism, and I'm going to bring all the sources. You already know them, but maybe two reasons why people don't think about it or focus on it. One is because since it's considered such basic knowledge and awareness that it doesn't even have to be a subject that worth speaking about, so to speak. Or two, because we're so used to it, we forget about it. We don't, not that we don't think that we have to talk, but we forget about it, right? I've never done this before, but I'm gonna quote Fiddler on the Roof. You guys know Fiddler on the Roof? Everybody knows Fiddler on the Roof? Right? You can't get accepted to Machon Meir if you know. It's the Fiddler on the Roof. There's the scene that, do you love me? Do I love you? Right? Between Tevye and the Rebbitzin. Right? I don't know. For 25 years I cooked for you, I cleaned for you, v'chule v'chule. Right? But like they never thought to say I love you? No. In those generations, it's a very cute, scene and idea. And the reason why it's so cute is because it captures the reality of, in earlier generations, there wasn't necessarily a concept of saying I love you, right? Or to say to Hashem, I love you, Hashem. Rabbi Avigdor Miller said that he gave a list of 10 things that can bring a person to greatness. One of them he said is, once a day you should look up to the heavens and say, Ribbon Shalom, I love you. You fulfill the mitzvah from the Torah of V'ahavta et Hashem Elokecha, right? But that wasn't like the spoken language. Today, this generation, things have changed. The way that we work, the way that things have come to play. If you don't tell your spouse, I love you, that's an affront. Of course, you have to say I love you, right? Even though there are some families today that still don't say it, even though I know my father loves me, even though he never told me once, type of thing. I hear a lot of times. But it's important for us to say it. So with the changing of the generations and I wouldn't say that roles change, but sensitivities sometimes change, and the needs of the generation grow. That's one answer. Another answer is that the farther that we get away from the times of the Beit HaMikdash and the times where we had prophets and we had such a different relationship, such more revealed relationship with the Kadosh Baruch Hu, Mount Sinai, receiving of the Torah. So our consciousness, we need to be reminded, remind ourselves a lot more often than we once did, right? Of why am I here? What am I doing? What's the purpose? Right? And so you see a focus in the later Sfarim Dafka, not because they created that, but because they saw that there was a need to stress that, so people would realize it, because it was getting lost. Rav Noach Weinberg, his brother, Rav Yaakov Weinberg, Rosh Hashiva of Ner Yisrael in America, he said something interesting. He said, any innovation in Jewish tradition always comes because we've lowered down another level. Like we've become more and more distant from Mount Sinai, right? And so that we need something new. For instance, it used to be the mitzvah. You guys know the mitzvah of learning Torah, where it comes from? Who knows where the mitzvah of learning Torah comes from in the Torah? What's the actual commandment that it says in? It doesn't say, thou shalt learn Torah. Teach your children, right? How are you going to teach your children if you yourself don't know, right? So the mitzvah of chinuch, of education in the Torah, is that a father should teach his son. A father should teach his children, right? And that's the way that it originally was. There was no such thing as a yeshiva. Eventually they created yeshivas because they saw that there was a need. Not every father was capable of teaching their sons. What's going to be with the next generation? We need to take responsibility for even other people's children to teach them Torah, right? And then there became dorms, and then in each such he gave different examples of innovations that we now recognize them as the norm. But they were innovations, and they were coming because it was necessary. Another one is the Mishnah. You guys know that we have a rule in the Gemara. Dvarim shebechtav iyata rashai lo'omram bal peh. Things that are Torah, parts of Torah, the written Torah, you're not allowed to say it and to learn it bal peh, to say it from memory. And some great people really fulfill that. Whenever even if they get in the middle of a drasha, if they're going to quote a pasuk, they look up the pasuk and they read it from the ketav, right? But we do it from the written. And devarim shebe'al peh, in the oral Torah, iyata rashai lekotvam. You're not allowed to write it down. The oral Torah has to remain oral. The written Torah has to remain written. So what are you talking about? We have this whole library is filled with oral Torah, and the Chumash is just one book. That would be enough. A Tanakh, right? The Mishnah, Rabbi Yehuda Nasi saw that because of the exile and the diaspora and Judaism was starting to get lost, he said that it's a time to do for Hashem. If I don't do this, then the Torah might be lost. And he wrote down the Mishnah, right? But he wrote down the Mishnah in a very cryptic way. The Mishnah doesn't explain all the halachot. Came a couple generations later, 200 years later, said, the Mishnah is still not enough. The Mishnah was never supposed to contain the entire oral Torah. It was just a little, kind of like bullet points to be able to, to go through the bare bones of the oral Torah. They said that's not enough. It's also going to get lost. They wrote down the Gemara. Is the Gemara understandable? Very difficult. I don't know anything as difficult as the Gemara. Right? The Gemara is very, very, very difficult. But they wrote that. But that was an expansion of that. And then there's more and more commentaries, right? As the generations go. And then came the Rambam. The Rambam said, this is the last stop. Once you have this sefer, you've got it all. And I heard from Rabbi Wine, there's more commentaries on the Rambam than any other sefer, right? So, there's no end. And today, for me, I have to tell you, I can't buy many of the most up-to-date and common modern commentaries on anything. I almost can't read it. It's just so long. For one paragraph of Rambam, one paragraph of this, like 50 pages of explanation, and the books that come out are so thick, and they're, commentaries on everything, and it's a beautiful thing. I'm not Khalila criticizing it. I just don't have the time for it all, right? But you see that's what it is. It's always expanding, and so too the consciousness of the need to write these things down was unnecessary in those generations. It was unnecessary, so to speak, for it to be focused on, and stressed. And these generations, it certainly is. As I don't know if you guys experience it, but when I learn these things, I get a tremendous chizik from these things. The clarity of what are these things? Every day we daven for Mechayim Eitim, that Hashem is going to revive the dead, right? Why is it so important? Some event that's going to take place in the future. Maybe I'll be around, maybe not, But here in the Ramchal really explains it. Gives chizik, an understanding of why these things are so fundamental to us.
So the first paragraph about describing how we're really here because Hashem wants to give us the ultimate good, that was just something that was understood, without speaking about it, without.
Right, that's a tradition that we have. That the place where it was first written down, I mean, it is in the Kabbalistic tradition. Writes it out in that language. But the Kabbalistic tradition is really based on the written Torah, meaning the Kabbalistic tradition very rarely says something that doesn't have a very clear source in the written Torah. So, give you an example. We have we have expressions in the Tanakh that Hashem is a jealous God. Hashem gets angry, right? And we also have expressions in the Tanakh that Hashem is compassionate and loving kindness, right? Which one is he? Or does Hashem just equally put on different hats?
Depends where the circumstance.
Depends on where the circumstances is how we're going to see it. But which one is the real Hashem? Will the real Hashem stand up? Like, who are you? How am I supposed to relate to you?
But he's
right?
Multifaceted.
Huh?
Multifaceted.
Yeah, but like if me and you are in a relationship, sometimes you're angry at me and sometimes you're really kind to me. how am I supposed to trust this relationship and know that, right? Like, which one is the real you?
It's all really one, right? All the attributes are really just one. It's not really separable from the other.
It could be, but that makes it really difficult. Like, I don't know which God I'm gonna get here, you know. And which one? And is, if he's angry, if he's jealous, like how are you supposed to be close with? Really, how are you supposed to developing a love? You should love HaShem your God. How are you supposed to love a God that's, angry, jealous? Like, really, these hard questions, right? So, if you look closely in the Torah, the greatest revelation of Hashem's, the greatest moment of Hashem's revealing Himself, when did it take place? After Mount Sinai, really? Huh? Shloshes Midot. The 13 midot of Hashem's compassion, of Hashem's loving kindness, is when He revealed. There was this amazing moment, Hashem, right? And He puts him in the rock, and He passes by him, and he teaches him these, right? So, comes the Rav Chaim Vital in the oral, the Kabbalistic tradition, and says, you have to know that Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. It says in many different places in the Gemara even, but it doesn't say it this explicitly. But in the Kabbalistic tradition, which is very much focused on our relationship with Hashem, says you have to know this is the deepest essence, the truest essence of God that we can possibly fathom. All the other hats that Hashem wears are necessary midot that He puts on based on our behavior, based on what He needs to happen in the world at different moments. But if you want to know the real Hashem underneath there, it's these Yud Gimel Midot. Hashem's loving kindness, His compassion. That's the essence, right? So the truth is, if you would look closely at the Torah and really investigate it, that would be very, very clear. But until Rav Chaim Vital comes and says it so clearly, you might have missed that. The Kabbalists were very much focused on that relationship with the Kadosh Baruch Hu. And so they speak in that kind of terminology, which is the terminology which we more relate to in our generation. Right?
So is that the pasuk that we look to for the first parak about we're really here to receive Hashem's goodness?
Biduk. Right. And that's one of the psukim. There's many psukim, but just in the later traditions, that it's just spoken out very, very clearly. Like, hey, you have to know that, that, like the Ramchal says here, right? The reason why the Ramchal wrote this sefer was he's not writing anything new in this sefer. Everything that he's writing is based on tradition. It's direct tradition, direct transmission. But he said nobody really compiled it in this way that makes it so clear that it reads like a book. Also like the Rambam. If you learn the Gemara and you try to extract halacha from the Gemara, it's very, very difficult. But that's what it used to be. And then the Rishonim said, you know what? Let me just give you a little bit of commentary to give you some direction. And the Rambam came. He was really the first one. And he said, I'm gonna write it out, just a book of halacha. It was such a chiddush. There's never been such a chiddush like that. And that started a whole different way of how we learn and how we write about halacha. And it was just his brilliance to do that, right? But even the Rambam could be more clear, obviously, because we have so many commentaries on the Rambam just to be able to understand, right? But so it's this constant process of us clarifying and distilling these things to make them more palatable, more understandable, more relatable, so that we can serve and use them better. And the Ramchal was just an extreme case of clarity among the sages of the last couple hundred years. Okay.
Thank you.
Now that we got that short question out of the way, we can. That's a great question, a very important conversation. Okay, gentlemen. So we're in chapter 4. Gimel. Whoever in the blue book, whoever can find it, please announce the page.
72.
Page 72.
Gimel.
Gimel. Yeah. Then it starts v'amakom asher hu betocho. Here, pass it to me. Let me see if I can find it real quick for you. It's got, because there's chapter 4 in the different sections of the book. Perek Revi'i, right. Page 31. 31 Gimel, the bottom paragraph. And in the gray books, it's 62. So, we were discussing how from the moment that a person is born, his experience is mostly physical, even though he's comprised of a body and a soul, and he's got this interplay, this war really going on between spirituality and physicality. But from the minute that we're born, most of our experience is very physical, right? And our soul only comes in at stages, like we said, and therefore the soul is kind of like in chains a little bit. The soul is restrained from being able to shine its full glory and to be able to for us to be able to have a full spiritual experience. And therefore, our main job really is to constantly be stressing spirituality over physicality. That doesn't mean denying physicality, living a life of asceticism, not being physical. We're in the physical world, and that's what we're going to talk more about in this next piece. But it means that our stress should always be, our focus should always be on the spirituality, because the spirituality always has the lower hand, right? And if we just say I'm not going to stress either one, so the physicality will always win out, right? Because our physical experience, just because it's so much more deeply built into our psyche from the very moment that we're born, it's always going to stand out more, right? So a person could say like, gosh, why do you always have to think about spirituality? Why can't we just have, So, but the idea is constantly focusing on the spiritual, because that's what's going to give the neshama the strength to do what it has to do in this world. Okay. I don't want to repeat too much of what we said last time, so we'll go on then Gimel. So that's regarding a man's situation in this world. And what about the place where we are, this world? Also, this place that we are is physical and dark. And again, I'll just say when the Ramchal says that physicality is dark, and what he means is that it's when it's devoid of spirituality. Physicality for physicality's sake. I said steak, so let's say steak. You take a steak, if you have just a piece of steak, so it's just, it's a piece of cow. That's what it is, it's just physicality. It's just, you say l'chavet Shabbos kodesh. You're doing it, you have a simcha from it. You take that simcha and you go serve Hashem with it. You go, right? You have for Sudas mitzvah, you're celebrating a siyum and you have delicious food. You say, this is Torah, Torah's gishmak, right? So then you're infusing it with spirituality. Then there's nothing dark about that physicality. But if the physicality is just for physicality's sake, which you see in the world, when people who are living physicality just for physicality's sake, there's almost nothing more disgusting, right? So it's like an animal. It's worse than an animal, because an animal, he doesn't have a choice. That's just how he is, right? But when a human is acting like an animal, it's something that's really it's a shameful thing for us to even to witness such a thing, right? So that's what he means. So this physical world, just the physical aspect, it's dark, but it's very physical. And all those who exist in this creation are all physical. They all have a physical element. And therefore, it's impossible for a person to live a fully spiritual existence in this world. He has to be part of the physical world. He has to be part of physicality. Because all of us have a body, and all the things that we're engaged with have some type of physical element to it, physicality. And the contents of a person's creation and his combination, the way that we're made, all that forces us to be engaged in the physical world. So some people, like we talked about, we've said a lot, a lot of different spiritual traditions and practices try to deny physicality, but it doesn't work. It really just doesn't work. First of all, you can't continue living in this world if you don't engage in physicality, right? But also, if the more that a person denies that physical element of himself, it ends up catching him around in the back door, so to speak, right? Which we see in all different kinds of traditions where people, disengage from for certain parts of physical life, and then they end up, behind closed doors, really engaging in those physical activities, right? And I think we could leave it at that. Everybody knows what we mean. So it's impossible to not be engaged in the physical world. It's impossible without eating, without drinking, without other physical needs. We all have them. We all have to live with them. We have to engage in them. It's impossible for a person not to acquire money in his life and belongings. You have to have belongings. You have to have, right, or else you can't really live. Just now they celebrated in India the Kumbh Mela, which is the largest gathering of human beings in the world, and actually happened to be at a Kumbh Mela some 20 some years ago, and the day that I was there was 20 million people. Just the day that it was there's a huge gathering of people, and the people that come, there's these tribes of sadhus, which are these like ascetics, Hindu ascetics, that they don't have a house, they live together, they live in ashrams, and right, and they would make like these like tent cities there, and and everybody brings them food. So they literally don't have anything. They've got their clothes on their back, a stick, and a little knapsack, and that's all they've got. But everybody else brings them stuff, right? So if you work out a deal like that, right? So the point is that everybody has to. You can't continue living in this world if you don't have some kind of engagement or type of system that helps you, right? Supports you. So it comes out that through a person's own body and from the world that we're surrounded in, and our actions in this world, we're absolutely, it's built in, we're embedded in physicality and the darkness of physicality if we don't do something about it, meaning about that darkness. And he has to make a tremendous effort not to get pulled down into physicality. That physicality should overtake his life, right? And for him to be able to purify and refine himself, it takes tremendous effort. Just like staying in shape, being healthy, right? I don't know, maybe like 100, 200 years ago, before there was like modern food, or what we call food today, right? All vegetables were organic, and all fruits were organic, and all all livestock was pasture. They were eating grass. They weren't eating, so you didn't have to do so much to be healthy in your diet. But today, if you don't do anything, you'll be eating terribly. You have to make a tremendous effort and spend twice as much money to be able to eat healthy today, right? And our lifestyle is sedentary, so we're all, we're not moving so much, right? If you don't do anything about that, so your body will be less healthy. You have to make more of an effort. So too, spiritually, if you're not making spiritual efforts constantly, it's like a downward escalator. It's always going to go down into the physicality. Because we need to be engaged in the physical world. So the reason why I think that a lot of the spiritual, like the how do you say, the prushim, the people that deny the physical world, is because it's just too complicated. How am I supposed to eat delicious foods and not be drawn down to the physicality of it? How am I supposed to have a relationship between man and wife and not be drawn into the physicality of it? I'm talking about just for the physicality's sake. How am I supposed to do that? It seems impossible. Feels impossible. Many struggle with it, right? So you see, it's not an easy thing. It might be better. They argue to just cut that off altogether. I'll get used to it. I won't think about it, and I'll live my life, and that way I can be focused on the spirituality, right? To be engaged in it and not to fall into it is much trickier. And that's what we're required to do, though. Now we're moving on to Dalet. From the depth of Hashem's infinite wisdom in the way that He created us, that even though the person man is embedded in this physicality, our souls are embedded here. We can't separate ourselves from the physicality of this world. That dafka through the physicality, he could be able to achieve his greatness and his refinement and his perfection. It's dafka through the eating. It's dafka through being married. It's dafka through having engagement in this world. V'adraba, hashpalatot yeh agbaton. He says it's contrary to what we might think. That dafka going into physical, that sinking down, that lowering down into physicality, that's what brings us it. That's what's going to bring us to our greatness. Umisham yikneh yakav v'chavod she'en kemohu. And when a person does it through that, meaning it's no trick, it's no kun, so to speak. If a person, goes and lives on a mountain by himself, and then after 120 years, he says, "Look, I had amazing shmirat einayim." Right, because you lived by yourself. Right, I had amazing midot. You never talked to another human being. Right? There's a story of a girl after she got married. She came to the stipler, or she sent someone to the stipler. The stipler go, and she said that I don't know what I made a terrible mistake. I married this boy. He was a yeshiva bocher, and everybody told me that he's a ben Torah. And so he says, so what was the mistake? He said, because he's got terrible midot. He doesn't have good midot. And so the stipler asked, well, why did you think that he had good midot? And she was in shock. She couldn't understand the question. She said, he's a ben Torah. They told me he's a ben Torah. And so the stipler said, when he was in yeshiva, he had his Gemara and his Stinder. And the Stinder never asked him to take the garbage out. His Gemara never asked him to be listened to. Right? Where was he gonna? Why should just because he learned Torah and he was a masmid that means that he should be also be a good midot, right? Until you're actually engaged in it, right? It's no kunst when you're married and you work on your midot and you eat delicious Shabbos foods, which we have to eat delicious Shabbos foods. You can't just eat crackers on Shabbos. I mean, you can if that's delicious to you, but you dafka eat delicious foods, and it's only for HaKadosh Baruch Hu, right? It's for it, and you're in this physical world, and you use your money for HaShem, and you use your house for HaShem. You bring in guests in your house, and you give money to tzedakah, and all the different mitzvahs that we have in the physical world. Dafka, that's what makes you great. Because you turn the darkness of the physicality into light. Right? That's the kunz. An angel can't do that. You guys know that we have a tradition that if angels were to come into this world and have to be engaged in physicality like we would, not even the greatest angel wouldn't be able to handle it and maintain their spirituality, maintain their level of Vegas with Hashem. Right? So that when they look at, and that's why, you guys remember we brought the Midrash that said that when Adam Harishon was created, the angels started singing to Adam because they weren't sure who was God. Is it God or Adam? His greatness was so impressive and so intense, right? The intense greatness is dafka that. Wow, can be in the physical world and not drawn down by the physical world. Not saying it's easy, but it's possible, and you could do it. There's nothing greater in all the creation. That's the greatest thing, right? That's why if you look at creation from HaKadosh Baruch Hu all the way down in the four worlds and all the way down to all the levels down to this bottom layer, which is this physical world that we're in, with the four elements of physicality, right? And everything's comprised of those. And Hashem took our souls, which is the second to highest thing, comes right underneath Hashem, and infused the highest thing into the lowest parts. Our bodies are comprised of the lowest parts of creation. And our soul is comprised of the absolute highest part of creation, right? Only with that power can we turn around the darkness of the physicality into light. It's unbelievable. And that's what the Sfarim Kodesh would say. The Nefesh HaChaim and others say that the dream that Yaakov Avinu had when he saw the ladder and the angels coming up and down, he said the ladder its head was in the heavens, and that its feet were grounded on the ground. So the Sfarim Kodesh said that that's us, right? Our soul extends all the way from the very, very top of the heavens all the way down into the ground. It's touching the ground. And the angels, they can go up and down, but they can't maintain that connection that we can. They get their their appointment from Hashem, they go and they fulfill it, and they run back up because there's no way they could be able to handle the physicality. So on one hand, we feel like, we just experience ourselves as a walking piece of steak sometimes, I'm just a physical being. I don't necessarily feel anything spiritual, right? But it's just not true. Your soul's the highest thing in the world. It's there, and you have unbelievable power that you're just totally unaware of, right? So, and that's it. That's his greatness. That's why he can achieve so much greatness, dafka, by being in the physical world, because you do something godly here. You turn that darkness into light. You reveal the godliness even in that place, right? Meaning there's nothing inherently wrong with the steak and the ice cream. You're revealing that there's God in that steak as well. I'm not scared of the steak. I don't have to run away from the steak. I'm not scared of woman, right? I dafka engage, and I reveal that the Kadosh Baruch Hu is in this place, right? And those two, by the way, lusts for food, for eating pleasure, and for male-female pleasure, those are the two greatest lusts. And those, al pi Kabbalah, and according to the Kabbalah, those are the deepest and the holiest services of Hashem in those places, dafka. The Ramban HaKadosh, Nachmanides, has a letter about the relationship between a man and wife, specifically about intimacy, and he calls it the letter Igeres HaKodesh. That's the holy letter, right? This is holy engagement, something that is so tainted by so many in the world. When it's used just for physicality, that's the holy place. And what do Hasidim do when you go to, anybody been to a Hasidic tish? Passing out food, the Rebbe's giving food, the Machan L'chai, it's a...
They jump on when the Rebbe's...
They're not really supposed to be jumping on but the point is the eating. The concept of eating, and dafka eating at the table of a tzaddik, it's a very, very big thing, right? Dafka taking these two lusts, which the world has struggled so much with them to find any spirituality in them, those are we find the most spirituality in them. That's where the avodah is, to point out and to bring out the light that's within them. Going weiter in the next paragraph. V'zeh ki aborei yitbarach shemo sam gvulot u'sdarim la'adam b'tashmish yishtamesh bo me'olam u'bliotav. HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the limits and the parameters of how one engages in this physical world, right? Meaning, you can do anything that's physically possible to do, but that doesn't mean that Hashem wants you to do anything that's physically possible to do, right? Hashem said that there's certain parameters within which I want you to live, right? Uv'kavana she'yitkaven bahem asher b'ha'ishtamesh behem adam, and with the intention that you should have in the focus, that when he's doing those things and engaging in the world in those ways, b'otam ha'gvulot u'b'otam ha'sdarim u'b'ota kavana she'tziva borei yitbarach shemo, if he does it in the way that Hashem said to do it, with the proper kavana that Hashem said that he should have when he's doing it, what should be his intention? That very physical act, po'el shlemut, is what helps him achieve greatness, right? Dafka through that physical act. Right now, at this minute, I want you to eat a piece of matzah, right? At this minute, I want you to blow the shofar on this day. On this day, I want you to refrain from eating and to feel a little bit hungry, right? At this time, I want you to, right, on Shabbat. These days, I want you to be working, engaging in physical and your parnasa. On this day, no work. And these are all the ways that I want you not to be working, right? It's amazing. It's something they can feel like if at first glance, nitpicky. Why does the HaKadosh Baruch Hu care so much, And what if I blow the shofar tomorrow? I blew the shofar. Isn't the main thing how I feel about it and, that I'm thinking the right thing? No. Dafka in this day, in these hours, and not at night, right? There's a reason behind all those things, right? And when you do it in the way that it's supposed to be done, right? There's a reason why it's supposed to be done that way. And if you do it in the way that it's supposed to be done, with the proper intention, that gives you absolute shlemut. Meaning, Hashem says, I'm putting you in a very difficult situation, i.e., in this physical world. You have to be engaged with it. You have no choice. But if you do it in the way that I tell you, it's not gonna It's not going to stop you at all. That's your greatness. That's going to be the way that you're going to be able to achieve the greatness, despite the challenge of it. And through that davka, a person will achieve an unbelievable level. And he will elevate himself from the lower state of being just physical, and be elevated above that. בעניינו של אדם, והכל ענייני מעלה והיקר אמיתי המצטרכים לו להיות ראוי לשיהיה מדבק בו ידבח שמו ונהנה מטיובו. So it's a long sentence, I'll translate in a second. וכנגד כל זה סדרה לו סדרים והגבילה לו גבולות, אשר בשומרו אותם יתעצם בו כל מה שצריך מן המעלה האמיתית שזכרנו ויושלם עניינו כל מה שהוא הרחקה מן הדבקות העליון. Hashem saw all the, of course he saw and he created, he saw, but knowing all the challenges that we would have in this world, all the difficulties that would be in this situation of having a body and a soul together, and all the greatness, the power of the soul, and the strength, the inner strength that we have that we might not be in touch with, but it's there. And Hashem said, it's exactly in this way I want you to engage in the world, and if you'll do that, then it's going to help you get to overcome everything. It's a perfect recipe. It's a perfect guidebook. It's a perfect guidelines how to do this world. When you're a person that has a soul and a body, right? That's what it is. It's the perfect guideline how to do it. If you get a fancy new machine, right, with some type of new technology, and you pull it out of the box and you plug it in, and you start just pushing buttons at random, and you start doing it. Well, I think it should be like this, and you don't want to read the guidebook, right? So it might not work to its full, right? If you're one of those very rare people that has the patience to read the guidebook, right? And what do you call it? The instruction manual, right? So then you're going to know best how to use this machine. Rabbi Shalom says, I'm giving you this thing. It's called a soul and a body. I'm giving you this thing, which he's going to say in very, very soon. The mitzvahs, the Torah and the mitzvahs, which this is the guidelines how to do it, right? I know that you've got urges. I know that you have desires. I know that your physical existence it has requirements. I don't want you to deny those things. I want you to conduct them in this way, not in just any way that you just feel. It's not like an animal that can just do whatever he wants. If you do it like this, you'll achieve greatness. Look, you can do whatever you want. I'm not going to stop you. Rabbi Shalom doesn't stop us. You can do whatever you want. But if you want to achieve greatness, this is the way, right? Which we're going to learn a lot more about, more specifics of the bulk of the Sefer is really going to be the specifics of the different mitzvot and what they're doing. What, right? I don't know the bulk, but a major part of the Sefer. Next paragraph. And if, referring to what we talked about in the last chapter, if there hadn't have been a decree upon man that he has to die and his body and soul have to separate for a certain period of time, because of the sin of Adam Rishon, as we mentioned above. So if a person would, if not for that decree, as a man would go and he would do the mitzvot and he would fulfill, he would engage in this way, his soul becomes so overpowering and strong, and the darkness of physicality in his body will become so weakened and tamed, that a person will become totally refined and totally purified. Together with his body, both of them, the soul and the body, would experience unbelievable dvekus, unbelievable connection and attachment with Hashem. Right? And there would be, and that's what it'd be. It would be like the existence of Olam Haba, like we spoke about in the last chapter. But since we have this decree, so it doesn't happen in one stage. Meaning it happens in two stages, after death and the revival of the dead, like we spoke about. So, but nevertheless, as the person does go in this world fulfilling the mitzvot and doing everything in the proper way, so his soul does become strengthened, right? Like we said previously, you don't get to feel it in its full force, not even close, but you do feel a little bit of the strengthening of that soul. And the body becomes also refined in a potential state, meaning it afterwards after the whole process it'll really be able to experience its full purification, right? Even though it doesn't happen it doesn't actualize right now, meaning the purity of the body. Sometimes this could be confusing, by the way, that a person is doing mitzvot for many years, and then after years he's like he still has a certain type of physical desires or physical lusts, and he feels like really bad about himself. He's like I've worked on this for so long, I can't believe I'm still working on this. I can't believe that I still have this. Like, where did all the work of the mitzvot and the purification that I've done? I know a rabbi. He's got a big white beard, a big white payas, and he won't. I think if he's not in his 70s, I think he's in his 70s, and he doesn't give classes to women. He said, "Look, I still have the Yetzer Hara." He said maybe there'll come a day where I won't, and I've got to eat. I'm not going to give classes to women, right? And I love it that he says that. I love that honesty. You say, God, look, this person knows Kola Torah Kula. Doesn't that make it that your body? No, right? The body becomes very, very purified, but you don't actually get to experience that in this state. That's only in the future state, right? But the soul, you do get to you do sense a greater spirituality and a certain what's the word, adinut, a gentleness of the soul, and a sensitivity, spiritual sensitivity. You develop, and you sense that, even though that's only just a small fraction of the greatness of what your soul is achieving throughout your life through the mitzvahs, right? וקונה אדם במצב שלמות בכוח ושיצא אחר כך לפה בזמן הראוי לו. And so a person, as he goes in this world doing the mitzvot, so he achieves an amazing amount of greatness, of perfect spiritual greatness and elevation that he'll only experience fully in the world to come, right? So again, if it hadn't have been for the gezerah, for the decree of death from the sin of Adam HaRishon, so that it wouldn't have been like that. It would be like you really see the growth, you feel the growth, you feel the spirituality, and you feel your body getting more purified and refined, and that your body can actually enjoy the spirituality in as much as the soul does, just in its own way, right? Masha'en ken today, that if we don't have the physical element, so it's very hard for us to feel spirituality, or to be able even to think about spirituality, if our bodies are not really being taken care of, constantly, on a physical level, right? Let's do a little bit more. You guys with me, or I didn't tire you out? Yeah, not so many questions there. You guys are quiet. I'm not saying anything controversial here. All right, let's go weiter. Now we're in Hey. אך הסדרים והגבולות האלה הנה הם כלל המצוות העשאים והלהבים. And these boundaries and rules of engagement, how HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants us to be engaged in the physical world, that's the mitzvot, the positive mitzvot and the negative mitzvot. I really don't like saying positive and negative, but the actionable mitzvot and the refraining mitzvot. אשר כל אחד מהם מכוונת אל תכלית הקנות באדם והעצים בו אחת ממדרגות המעלה האמיתית שזכרנו. Each one of them, he said, why does HaShem make 630? Someone, the guard in Mechomia just told me now. He bought a new book, and he was laughing. He said it cost 303 shekels. He said, why didn't it cost? Why not 300? Why not 305? Why 303? Right? How did the Kadosh Baruch Hu decide 613 mitzvot? Right? I mean, no, you give it 600, or maybe make it easier, 300, So each one of them is absolutely necessary, right? For us, we like to see things in round numbers. For Rebbe Shalom, that's a complete number, 613, right? Works differently than our mathematical systems and wisdom as we have it today, right? 613 is a complete number, and each one of them is necessary and different, and it completes a certain. I just want to translate exactly what he says here. Each one of them has the intention to elevate and to strengthen the person's soul and body, right? To help him achieve a particular level of completion and perfection. In other words, what the tefillin of your head do, your tefillin of your hand cannot do, and vice versa. And neither one of them can do what the tzitzit do for you, and neither one of those can do what matzah does for you, and none of those can do what tzedakah can do for you. Each one is completing something. I'll skip a minute here and tell you that in our tradition is that 613 is in correspondence to the 613 parts of our soul. That our soul has 613 parts, whatever that means, and that our body also, as we know, has 613 parts. Right? We have Ramach, mitzvot aseh. We have 248 positive mitzvot. Right? Mitzvahs are actionable mitzvot, and those are according to what Chazal called our limbs. What does that mean? Body parts. Like today, the doctor in the room. So I don't know what I'm going to do about this, but I don't know how they define in anatomy what is a body part, what's not. You have a limb or you have organs, right? So when Chazal counted 248, they're clearly including organs and limbs. What is called a limb, right? So differs from modern anatomy, not the anatomy, but the science of anatomy, and then we have shasa 365 sinews or veins, right? Different understandings of what that is, right? So just like we have together that 613 body parts, we also have 613 aspects of our soul, and the soul is connected to that body part. Each part of the soul has a body part that it sustains and it gives it its life force. And the thing that gives the soul the life force is the mitzvot, the 613 mitzvot. Each one goes to a different place. Each one sustains and supports a different part of our body and our soul, right? So that's what the Ramchal is saying here without specifying that. Right, and also those help to remove the darkness of the physicality and the lackings of physicality. By way of doing the positive mitzvah or refraining from the negative mitzvah, not doing it, right? So one way that the Rav Chaim Vital explains it, and also the Baal Tanya, is that mitzvat lo taseh is that if you don't do anything, there's a natural flow, spiritual flow, just like the mitzvot lo taseh are in conjunction, they reflect the sinews, the veins, right? If you don't do anything, if you don't put anything to block one of those arteries, so everything will flow wonderfully. If a person does do something negative to that, it'll block it. So to eating milk and meat, for instance, right? If he refrains, so there will continue to be the normal flow. If he doesn't refrain, so he puts a certain level of spiritual blockage there, right? That's for the lota says the negative mitzvah. For the positive mitzvot, it's not about just maintaining the regular flow. It's about increasing light, as the Tanya says, right? It's like it's adding nutrition to your body, right? It's not just not putting unhealthy things in; it's putting healthy things in, right? Bring a tosefet or. So that's the difference between the positive and the negative mitzvah. But each one is specific. Ve'ulam prata mitzvot kulam chen prate kol mitzvah mitzvah hine hem miyusadim ala mitat metziuto v'inyanos shel adam b'chol bechinotav. And every one of them is absolutely perfectly specified for the details of the mitzvah are necessary, and the fine details are necessary. If a person says, "Look, I am already wearing tefillin, so what's the problem if they're not 100% kosher? What's the problem if I like green tefillin, I like white tefillin, right? What's the problem? One thing, what's that? The most beautiful, mahudar, perfect set of tefillin, but I painted them white. Well, I just didn't paint them. I like the natural skin color of the right. So what's the problem? There's the most mehudat tefillin in the world, right? Yeah, but you're missing one detail of it, which that detail is necessary. It's not arbitrary that Rabban Shalom wanted the tefillin to be black. It's not arbitrary that there should be 4 boxes and not 5 or 3. It's not arbitrary that there should be separate boxes in the head, but in the arm there should be 1 box, right? It's not arbitrary that there should be 4 different klafim, 4 different parshas, and then the tefillin in your arm there should be 1 long parsha, right? Or that the straps should be long enough. None of it is arbitrary. Every single detail of it is absolutely necessary, right? What kind of water do you use when you're making matzah? What kind of flour do you use? Right? How much do you eat? Right? What if the matzah was cooking? The matzahs have to be ready in under 18 minutes. What if it was 18 minutes and 5 seconds? It makes a difference, right? Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. There's an argument in the Gemara Maseches Menachos that the what do you call it, a korban mincha, a flour offering. Right? There's one of the sacrifices in the temple was a flour offering, and there's different amounts that they would bring. So the question over there is, what's the biggest one? And they say it's shishim isaron, and which is a very large amount of flour, and it comes with 1 little serving of oil, and you mix the whole thing up, right? And so one of the Tanaim says, what's the reason for that? It's because that's the largest amount of flour that can really soak up all of that oil. Any more flour, they wouldn't be able to soak up the oil. Right? It's too much flour. You guys with me? And the example, and so so one of the Tanaim says, "Oh, come on, 60 can soak it up, but 61 can't." And Rabbi Shimon says, "Gewalt." He doesn't really say Gewalt. Rabbi Shimon says, "Kol midos chachomim hen." He says that the midos of our sages and of our Torah are exact. Right? When Rabban Shalom says 18 minutes, it doesn't mean 18 minutes and 3 seconds. It means 18 minutes and less, right? When he says the tefillin have to be black, right? There's certain things, of course, that in halacha that are, even though it's not perfect, but it's within the boundaries of halacha, of what's, right? It's still kosher. But sometimes a person could do something and it's as if he didn't do the mitzvah. And it's not because we're just trying to be cruel and nitpicky. It's because each one has a particular tikkun. It's doing something for the soul, right? Down to the finest details. And that's why we spend our day learning about these fine details, is because they're that important to us, right? Of course, this goes back to your question. Sometimes we can get so lost in learning the details in the Torah world, so much that we forget why we're doing it. Why is it so important, right? There's a story, a joke that they tell, the difference between Hasidim and Misnagdim. Not Misnagdim. Hasidim and Litvaks it's a joke. They said that there was a Litvak, two Litvaks and 2 Hasidim were learning the piece in the Gemara where it talks about Rabbi Yonatan ben Uziel, who was the greatest of Hillel's students in the time of the Second Temple, and it says that he was such a holy person that when he would learn Torah, if a bird would fly over him, the bird would burn up. Right, and so it says that the Litvaks are at the Chassidim are like, wow, what a level, what a madrega, what kedusha, what there's, and then the Litvaks say, well, who has to pay for the bird? What if it was his neighbor's bird? So it's a cute joke. We're not trying to make fun of anybody. That's not the point. Sometimes a person can get so caught up. I tell another joke about Machon Meir and Merkaz Harav, that Merkaz Harav students and Machon Meir students went together to the hospital to visit sick Jews in the hospital to cheer them up. And they go on the bus together, and Machon Meir guys get off with their guitars and their horns and their flutes and their drums, and they go running through the hall, and they go from room to room giving joy to everybody. When they come back, they see the Merkaz Harav guys are still outside. They haven't gone in yet. And they said, "What are you doing?" They said, "We're trying to understand the mitzvah of Biko Cholim." You got to just do it, right? So each detail is so important. It's so important. There's a reason there's a reason behind it, and Halavadi, we should be able to learn all the deeper reasons and understand them and to fulfill it in the most simple way as well. Let's finish this paragraph. think we're at where it says V'omnam, right? Did we get there? That was explaining what we just explained. And Hashem's infinite wisdom that knows all this to its depths. And Hashem knows all of his creations and the reason why it's supposed to be, why a shofar has to be like this, and why, right, and all of his creations, all their limitations, all the parameters. Hashem sees everything. He saw everything. And he included everything in the Torah and the mitzvot meaning it's complete. There's nothing lacking there in order to be able to help a man achieve his total perfection and completion in this world for the purpose of what he really came into this world, not for other ideas that we might also have. Just like the pasuk says, Hashem has commanded us to do these mitzvot for us, that it's good for us, right? He gave the mufurish in the pasuk. Hashem He gave it that it should be good for us. I mean, that's the source of what we were talking about before, right? That it's not just Hashem. Like sometimes people say, like Hashem, it's hard for me to do this mitzvah exactly like you. Right? Why do you need this? Like, does Hashem need me to not check my email on Shabbos? What does that do for Hashem? Right? It has nothing to do with Hashem. It has to do with you. It's for you that Hashem doesn't want you to check your email, and maybe not for the reasons why you think it's important. You know, a lot of people talk about what's a day of rest and it's nice for me. That's also wonderful, right? But there's all kinds of reasons. We don't necessarily have to understand all the reasons behind all the mitzvot. We have to know that there are reasons, and there's a precise, absolutely divine precision why it has to be just so. And some of them, like we have, like the past time with the chukim. The chukim, we can't understand the depth of them, even though in our Kabbalistic tradition it does bring a lot of deep explanations for them. But it's just a little bit of a human understanding how much we're able to grasp, right? But Hashem knows why it has to be so, and Hashem knows why this does it, right? If I tell you vitamin C, you're sick, and I tell you take a lot of vitamin C, it's going to help you, right? Wait a minute. Let me just check. I want to see all the research that's been done on vitamin C before I take it, right? If you trust me and you have enough of a reason to believe that it's right, so you're going to take it. You don't necessarily have to understand. If a person's really sick and they need antibiotics, right? Everybody should be healthy. He needs antibiotics, so he's so grateful. He doesn't have any idea how the antibiotics works, but he's going to take it because he knows it's going to make him feel better. It's going to bring him out of his sickness. Rabbi Shalom, he's the one that created us. He created this whole thing. He's saying, do this. This is going to give you everything that you need in this world and everything that I want from you. Right? What could be a better deal than that? It's givaldic. Right? When you look at it in this way. I really want to do this next little paragraph, but I'm going to stop because I don't want to go over too much. So Bez Hashem, we'll start off on something really. The next paragraph I have underlined and starred in my book.